Welcome to the ROCK's online worship experience. We're so glad you decided to stream into our service today. Get ready to have an exciting worship experience that is sure to transform your life. Whatever you need from God at this very moment, He is able to provide and do so much more. Now, before the service begins, there are a few things we invite you to do. 1, while you're worshiping with us online, feel free to interact with our online ministers in the chat and share this broadcast with your family and friends so they too can enjoy this online experience. 2, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Simply search for Dr. Dana Carson and click subscribe. On this channel, you'll find a host of kingdom resources that will help you build on the spiritual foundation that God has laid in your life. And 3, follow the ROCK WOI on Facebook and Instagram to connect with us and discover all the ROCK is doing. Now get ready to shake off all your worries and stresses and experience the power of God in your life. Service will begin soon.
Thus, our text is an extraordinary text that is found in apocalyptic literature of the book of Daniel. Daniel's life and ministry existed during the 70-year period of the Babylonian exile. He was deported there at the age of 16 and then handpicked for government service. He became the mouthpiece of God for both the Gentiles and the Jewish world. Now, the book of Daniel is key to understanding the book of Revelation, but contains very pertinent prophetic utterances that unlock some of Israel's necessary future and history. Our text is within the prophetic utterances that has come to be referred as the Maccabean revolt. And so the context is the context of Hellenization, Alexander the Great, the Greekizing of the Jewish world. And the Greeks' first encounter with the Jews was an extraordinary encounter because the Jewish people were the only monotheists in the world. They were the only people that believed that there was one God. The rest of the world was polytheistic. The Greek culture was so different than the Jewish culture that they despised the Jewish culture, and they saw the Jewish culture as being primitive and unprogressive. The Greeks did not understand the Jewish adherence to Torah, a book they claimed to have received from God, which contained rituals, restrictions, and values that were far removed from the Greek world. The Greeks valued education and intellectual pursuits that appealed to the well-to-do Jewish elite as being progressive. So when the Greeks came to take over the Jewish culture, they began to infiltrate the so-called educated class, so-called intellectuals that always wanted to be considered progressive. They would send their children to the gymnasiums, and they stopped their children from receiving circumcision, and some of them had their children engaged in reverse circumcisions, which was a painful procedure. But they didn't want their children to be called mutilators of the flesh, because the Greeks would refer to them as mutilators of the flesh, because the Greeks worshiped the perfection of the human body. And so to circumcise oneself was a negative piece. And so during Hellenization, Antiochus Epiphanes, who's called Mad Dog, the Greeks came against the Jewish culture and Judaism and began to cause the Jews to stumble, as Antiochus Epiphanes, who's called Mad Dog, desecrated the temple, sacrificing a pig unto Zeus on the altar of the Jewish temple. During this period of time, a war broke out called the Maccabean revolt. The Maccabean revolt broke out, and the Jews prevailed after 3 years. They stopped the Greeks from desecrating the temple, and it took them 3 years. Mattathias, the father who had several sons, they took to the hills when one of the high priests was about to kill a pig and sacrifice it on the altar of the temple because the Greeks said to do so. Mattathias killed him dead, and then killed the Greek representative, and then got together 12,000 Jewish men, and they fled to the mountains, and they engaged in a long-term war. The Greeks had a minimum of 40,000 troops they deployed to fight against the 12,000. But these 12,000 refused to allow the Greek culture to take over their culture with God. And thus, after 3 years, they were able to go back and cleanse in the temple. And when they went back to cleanse the temple, the first thing they did was to look for a menorah, a candlestick with seven, the stand with 7 candles. And then they looked for the oil that was sanctified by the priest. But there was only one bottle of oil left, and it only could light the candles for 1 day. And so it took them several days to go and press and produce more oil. But a miracle took place. The oil, rather than lasting for 1 day, it lasted for 8 days. And that's where you get the celebration of Hanukkah. That's where you get the Feast of Lights, or the Festival of Lights. It's from this scenario. And thus, they fought. But Antiochus Epiphanes attacked their world. He attacked the temple. He attacked the high priest. He attacked the Jewish calendar. He said, because if they don't have holy days, then they will forget about being holy. So he attacked their physical locations. He attacked their leadership. He attacked their calendar, and then he attacked Torah. He started collecting the scrolls and burning them. And in the midst of this experience, they resisted Antiochus Epiphanes. And in verse 32, Daniel makes this very powerful statement. He said there are going to be some that defile the covenant of Israel. Those were the ones who were compromising. But he says, but they that know their God. He said that the ones that really know me. He said that they will be empowered or strong and do mighty exploits. So, what does this word know mean? Thus, in Hebrew, this word is yada. This word yada means to know. It originates from the Hebrew word yad. Yad means hand or penis. And only context can tell you which is to be used. So, to know means to experience or realize. So only those who experience their God, only those that have a realized experience of their God. So we see this word for the first time in the Hebrew scriptures in Genesis 4:1, when it says, and Adam knew Eve and begot Cain. Thus, that word know is translated in the Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Hebrew Bible, and it translates that word yada, gnosko, which means to know by experience, to know intimately. Thus, God says, the folk that don't know me intimately will compromise. Okay. When the world begins to take over your world, when they start offering master's degrees in LGBTQ executive leaderships at Stanford University, when they finish taking over your world, only the people that know God intimately will stand strong, but others will break under the compromise. Oh, y'all don't like me this morning. When they begin to teach your children their own sexuality, you won't feel a need to move your kids out of that environment and create an environment that teaches them the values and the principles that you hold true to. Instead, you will see what the world is doing as being progressive. Listen, I'm telling you, we have our own Antiochus Epiphanies today that we've got to deal with. And he's attacking our churches. He's attacking our leadership. He's attacking our calendar. He's attacking our book. You need to understand we're under attack. We're under assault. We're trying to be pushed out. Thus, we see this word being used in Jeremiah chapter 1. And God said to Jeremiah, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. He says, I knew and formed, which means when you know God, that means then you have also tapped into what God formed you to be. See, because if you know God, you know the plans that he has for you. See, when you know God, you understand you've got a kingdom agenda. Anything you can almost do for the world, you can do for the kingdom. But you got to have a kingdom vision. You have to have the ability to see. Why aren't we building things that transform people's lives on a humongous level? Why are you not involved in your church's global mission? Why are you not involved in seeing God do great things through your life? You're supposed to be a world changer, not just a Sunday morning attender. God wants to use your life. People say, I want to hear him say, well done. Well done for what? You didn't do nothing. God is not going to say well done because you paid your mortgage. God is not going to say well done because you sent your kids to college. God is not going to say well done because of the things that you've done to secure natural things in your life. God is only going to say well done when you've done his will. What are you doing for God? Not what can God do for you. What are you doing for God? Thus, to know means to be intimate. When you know God, you get impregnated. It's an intimate term. See, when you know God, you start having some God babies. I'm going to say it again. When you know God, you start having some God babies. You spend time with God. Next thing you know, you want to do something big for God. Next thing you know, you're counting stars and particles of sand. And God is showing you what he wants to do. He wants to change generations through your lives. He wants to change nations through your life. But you limit yourself to your itty-bitty job and career. Thus, when you know God, you cannot do average. Oh, I'm almost finished. I said, when you know God, you cannot do average. When you know God, you cannot do ordinary. When you know God, you must do mighty exploits. It says, they that know their God shall do mighty shall be strong and do mighty exploits. What do you want to do big for God? I'm not talking about what you want big for yourself. You can't use God for yourself. What's the difference between an unsaved man and a saved man that just want the best they can have for themselves? Absolutely nothing. What profit a man to gain the world and lose his soul? God said, if you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, all other things will be added unto you. Let me tell you something, beloved. God has given us here at the Rock more ministry than we have ministers. Listen, we're called to do mighty exploits. So if you ever look at this ministry, you need to understand. I left a mega church ministry that people thought I lost my mind to leave that church. I was known across the country from that church. And I left it and went to Alvin, Texas. But here we are now because we know our God. We have 3 major campuses: Alvin, Texas, Edgebrook, and Broadway. We have a seminary. We have a school in Kenya educating 500 children. We have a leadership development corporation. We're about to open up a construction company and architectural design firm so that we can build on our 221 acres of undeveloped land lying right in the heart of Pearland. I'm saying God has called us to do mighty exploits. Next Tuesday, we're going to close Tuesday on a new children's church building out there in the back. Why? Why? Because we're called to do mighty exploits. This Tuesday, this past Tuesday, we just closed on our own radio station. We have our own FM radio station. I'm talking about terrestrial and digital. God has called us to do mighty exploits. Look to your neighbor, say, whatever I put my hand to and use all my might, God will give it to me as long as it'll bless somebody else. I'm called to do big things, great things. When you know God, you grow strong. R.O.C.K is the Hebrew term used there, strong. It's the same word used for Joshua, only be strong and courageous. If you know God, then be strong and courageous. Stop being scared. Some of you don't realize you ain't gonna never do what God has called you to do because God calls you to scary. He doesn't call you to be scared, but he does call you to scary, but he doesn't call you to be scared. The Bible said perfect love casts out all fear. Why don't you look at somebody and say, I'm not afraid to go for something bigger than me.
I hope you enjoyed that message. They that know their God shall do mighty exploits. God is calling you to do great things in his name and for his kingdom. What an exciting opportunity and season of explosion you and I are in. And just think about all of the great things that we could do for God in this chaotic time in which we are living. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this message. I hope that you'll send for a copy of this message and the entire series, Knowing God, or the benefits of knowing God. It will bless your life. And once again, if you're ever in the Houston area, stop by one of our 3 locations. 8 o'clock a.m. Alvin, Texas, 10 a.m. Broadway Street here in Houston, and 6 p.m. Edgebrook Drive in Houston, Texas. We'd love to have you to come. And if you can't make it in person, then surely stream in, join us online. We got some exciting things coming along. Please look forward to our Holy Convocation, July the 10th through the 15th. You don't want to miss that time. Until next time, shalom. God bless you.
Thank you for worshiping with us today. If you are in need of prayer or someone to talk to, our online ministers are available just for you right now in the chat. We invite you to join us again for one of our powerful worship experiences that happen every week. Sundays at 10 a.m. is the Extraordinary Worship Encounter, where you can receive an on-time kingdom word. Then Sundays at 6 p.m. is our Miracles, Signs, and Wonders services, where you can receive any breakthrough you've been looking for. And Wednesdays at 7 p.m., join us for Understanding the Bible with Dr. Dana Carson, where you can get your biblical questions answered. We look forward to connecting with you. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Simply search for Dr. Dana Carson and click subscribe. On this channel, you will find a host of kingdom resources that will help you build on the spiritual foundation that God has laid in your life. And then follow The Rock, WOI, on Facebook and Instagram to connect with us and discover all that The Rock is doing. You can also get connected with us on our website at therockwoi.com. Again, thank you for worshiping with us and be blessed.